Hey guys, what's going on? It's Don here from Novaspirit Tech and welcome back to the channel. And today we're going to be checking out Mini Forum's UM700. And guys, I think this is the one. So let's get started. Now, first I want to thank Mini Forums for sending this over to me, and everything we talked about will be linked down in the description below. Now, what I mean by this might be the one is that if you follow my previous videos, I'm in the search for trying to find a mini PC that will actually be close enough to a Steam Deck so we could build ourselves a Steam Deck. Now, this doesn't mean the search is over. There will still be more PCs that come along the way that will resemble very close to or best match to a Steam Deck or even more powerful. But for now, the specs on this guy is very similar to what you would find on a Steam Deck. That's why I say this is the one. Now, there's a lot of things that I do like about this Mini Forum's UM700, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But first, let's talk about the specs. Now, what you get with this guy is a Ryzen 7 3750H, which is their mobile processor with 4 cores, 8 threads, base speed of 2.3 and turbo boost to 4 gigahertz. Now, in this particular model, I do have 16 gigs of RAM on dual channel, so you can actually replace the RAM. It's not soldered on, and I think it's upgradable to, I think maybe 32. I'm not even sure, but I think you can go up to 32 on this guy. Now, you also have 512 gigabyte NVMe, and again, this model has that. You could also upgrade it or downgrade it, whatever you want. Now, one of the particular things that I do love about this is that this also still fits a 2.5-inch SATA SSD, and it comes with a special connector for that. You can mount it right to the lid of this device. Now, another feature that I really like, to take this thing apart, you don't need any screwdrivers. You could just press the 2 buttons on the bottom and the lid comes right off just like that, and it exposes all the internal parts. So here you can actually see the RAM that you could actually replace, and then on the opposite side you could see the NVMe. Now, on top of the lid, that's where you could perfectly fit a 2.5-inch drive. Now, in the contents of the case, what it comes with is a mounting bracket that you can mount this directly to the back of a monitor. And it also comes with a short display cable and a short HDMI cable, so you don't have to go searching for those. As well as the special cable that you need for the SATA SSD. So it doesn't use standard cables for that. It also comes with a power brick, which is a 19-volt power brick, and instruction manual. Now, to talk about the case a little, on the outside, you do have a power button, as well as a USB 3.1, the blue one, and then a USB 3.0, but this allows for power output up to 2 amps, then a USB-C. Now, in the back, you have the power barrel, then a 2.5 gigabit LAN, which is something I love, and I love that we are getting to that point because my house is equipped with 2.5 right now, well, up to 10, but I think 2.5 is starting to get to the norm, and once you start using 2.5, you're never going to go back to gigabit. It also has a display port, full-size HDMI, and then 2 USB 3s in the back. Now, as far as the entire bottom of this construction, it's a huge heatsink with the fan, and the fan is really not noticeable unless you first boot. The first time it boots, it spins the fan up to like almost 100%, and that's the only time you really hear it. Otherwise, I benchmarked the crap out of this guy and I didn't even hear the fan spin up. Now, this does also ship with Manjaro. It doesn't come with Windows, it comes with Linux. And Manjaro is actually the operating system that I need to build the Steam Deck. So I might just keep the operating system on here so I don't have to keep swapping around. They have a partnership with Manjaro, so you also see a Mini Forums wallpaper with Manjaro. They have their theming options close to what I would be familiar with, and it's running KDE. Now, I'm going to jump into the desktop to show you little bits about the desktop. Alright, so here's the desktop on first boot. It's actually running Manjaro, and they have their own wallpaper. That's why you see Mini Forums on the bottom right. And the color scheme stays throughout. Very clean, all green and everything. So I really like, well, Manjaro, most part is green, so I do like how pretty it is, you could say. Now, it also blends in with everything. So I actually got a couple of folders open already because I was working on some stuff, but if you're familiar with Windows 10, this is very similar style if you've never used Manjaro before, but it does come with this operating system, and it's very easy to get accustomed to if you are planning to use an Arch Linux operating system or a Linux operating system. Otherwise, you could always switch to Windows 10 or Windows 11 if you want, but here we go. Let's do system stats, their system monitor. And I actually really like the system monitor. The one from KDE is probably one of the best ones that I've ever used. So on first boot, we're using about 1.2 gigabytes. It's about 1.1, 1.2 on first boot. I have a lot of games installed, so you can't really rely on this storage because I got Forza, which is about 100 gigs, a couple of other games installed. So yeah, you do have 512 shipped with this guy, so that's pretty good. And the CPU usage is pretty low. Now, one of the things that I did change or add is this temp sensor, where you could actually see all the 8 cores, or technically 8 threads. It's 4 cores, 8 threads, and you can see the temperature is right around 34°C, as well as the GPU chilling right around 33. And this monitor is something I put together so you can see the temperatures while it's running. Otherwise, it's not too hungry on the memory usage if you are planning to use this on first boot. Now, I really do like Vivaldi, which is their current browser that they have. I've used Vivaldi before, but it's not as polished as this. I used it years ago, and I really do love how Vivaldi looks and feels on actually this operating system. Going into any websites, it just feels very smooth. So if I was to go into, I don't know, Geekbench, okay, that's what I was playing around with before, and I go into downloads, and I'll download something for Windows, it automatically asks me if I want to save on top, pops it out, got a really nice, cool, I don't know, I just really like this browser. So if you ever decide to play around with a browser, Vivaldi is a pretty good browser. It's based on Chrome. It's made for multi-tabbing, multi-folder. I don't know how to explain it, but you could put tabs on tabs on tabs on top of each other, and you could split the view from down, like in a cross section, split it in half, whatever you want to do. Anyway, that is basically it as far as the desktop goes. I do have Steam installed on here already, and I will be showing you some games that I benchmarked and played on this guy. So we'll jump into the benchmarks now. All right, as far as the benchmark goes on this guy, we have Cinebench, but the scores are incorrect. What I mean by that is that I am running a Windows version of Cinebench running over Wine, so you're doing some emulation there, so the scores are actually not accurate. And judging from the score that we get from this guy, I have older mini PCs that actually is near the score of this guy, so it doesn't make any sense. Don't even trust the Cinebench score. I'm just putting it up here for a placeholder, and I will replace it as soon as I do a benchmark with Windows on this, or find the proper version of Cinebench for Linux. The Cinebench score is 1367, which again, don't trust because it's not real. We're going to move on to Heavenly Benchmark, which is 568, and Heavenly Benchmark is pretty good compared to the other mini PC that we've tested, but then again, you got a pretty good GPU on here. Now, as far as the read and write speed, the read speed on the M.2 is 2477, and as far as the write speed is 1175, so that's how you know it's actually an M.2 instead of a SATA SSD. For the PC Mark and 3D Mark scores, I can't get that because that's also a Windows only appliance, so I wasn't able to install that on here. Technically, when you buy the mini forms, it actually comes with crossover, and I might be able to run crossover with 3D Mark or PC Mark, but again, it's unfair because that's emulation in the background, so you're wasting CPU cycles on that, so I won't get an accurate score. But if you do get one of these mini forms with the Manjaro, it does come with crossover and a serial key for that. Now, you could rely on the processing speed of the next benchmark, which is the Geekbench, because that is crossover platform, so you could actually run the benchmark on Windows, Linux, and Mac. And for the single core speed, you get 1033, which is not bad, but the multi-core score, you get 3385, which blows the other mini PC away because that's actually a pretty good score. All in all, the price of this guy, to be honest, it's pretty decent. It's $579. And if you compare this to my desktop right here, this is actually slightly faster as far as the CPU compared to my first generation Ryzen 7 right over here. Obviously, I have a 1070 in here, so the graphic card will blow this one away. But as far as processing speed, this is much smaller in footprint and pretty fast. Now, compared to a footprint of the previous guy, it's actually very similar. Like, it's about the same, but the height is the only difference that you would normally see. Otherwise, you're not wasting that much space just to run this guy, and it could run a good amount of games. So the game I ran, which I do like to do benchmarks on, is Forza 5, just because the graph, it actually compares to where you're struggling between the CPU or the GPU, so I do like to run the Forza 5 benchmark. And without FSR, which is another thing I'll talk about in a second, you get 21 frames per second in all these specs. Now, you could see on the right side that all the CPU is not the bottleneck, it's the GPU that's bottlenecked, obviously. But yeah, it actually plays the game without a problem. Now, you can on Linux computers, which is going to be great for Steam Deck, is enable FSR for any game that's running DXVK. And that's pretty much all games on Steam that requires DXVK. You can enable FSR, which is Fidelity Super Resolution. It's AMD's version of their DLSS for NVIDIA, which scales certain parts of the screen to a lower resolution to give you better performance. In AMD FSR version, it actually scales the entire screen and upscales it and all this stuff. It does a lot of cool stuff to give you the increased frames. So running the benchmark on FSR mode in performance, you actually get 26 frames per second on the same benchmark, which is very impressive. Now, if you want to know more about this, I actually have a video on my gaming channel on how to enable it, how to install it, get what games working on it, etc, etc. So if you want to check that out, head over to my gaming channel. Otherwise, it runs games perfectly fine so far. The games at least I tested, which is Forza 5, Rebel Galaxy. I've tested some emulation with this, which is PS2. I tested some Switch in the background as well, which works, but I'm not going to show any of that. But yes, emulation works perfectly fine with this as well. Obviously, it will because we were able to do it on the mini PC with Intel GPU. This one's going to run it no problem. So that is it for all the benchmarks and games and the desktop and stuff. But this is not the last time you'll be seeing this, because I will be doing a full tutorial on how to convert this into a Steam Deck. There's actually a development kit and everything for it. So I'm going to convert this over to a Steam Deck and booting into the big viewer and all that other stuff. So yeah, be sure to hit that notification button and subscribe to this channel if you want to see that video come out. Again, this is not the strongest specs that they have on their Mini Forums lineup. They actually have some stuff that's a little bit more powerful than this guy, but I found that this is the most similar to what you would get from a Steam Deck. That's why I decided to go review this one instead. That is it for me, guys. If you guys have any questions about this, let me know down in the comments below. If you guys are new to the channel, consider subscribing and also hit that bell notification icon so you know when the next video is going to be out. And as I say in my nerd cave, hack till it hurts.